Money, Renault picks up virtual control of America's #5 automaker. Under the plan that was approved today, Renault's stock share rises to 46% with options for 59% control. AMC officials say the money will let them proceed with plans to introduce a new model every 6 months starting in 1983. It may come as no surprise to you that the OPEC countries are raising the price of crude oil by 10%, but it still hurts. ABC's Roger Peterson takes a look at whether the increase will be felt.
Energy Department analysts believe the OPEC price hike will end up costing Americans another 5 cents a gallon for gasoline and heating oil. And on top of that nickel for OPEC, since decontrol of domestic crude oil prices already adds a penny a gallon each month, we can expect heating oil prices to be up about 10 cents a gallon by spring. Gasoline also up a dime by late spring. And those are just the most obvious effects. As petroleum prices rise, we end up paying more for electricity generated by oil. Businesses pay more for fuel, so we pay more for their products. Transportation costs go up, adding still more to the cost of what we buy. Everything made from petroleum, from the plastic parts in cars to the wrapping at the meat counter to the petrochemicals used in clothing, gets more expensive. Every OPEC price hike means an across-the-board increase in the cost of living. Roger Peterson, ABC News, Washington.
And when we come back, more about the terrible economic news of this day.
And the story about Christmas rip-offs.
If you're dashing through the snow wondering what the dickens to give someone this Christmas, give them a...
Milwaukee, a court hearing on an apartment building the city considers unsafe. It continued today. Kathy Michaelby was there.
City building inspectors returned to the Swiss Arms apartment house this morning on the request of Judge Michael Barron. Last week, inspectors checked out the building after the 7th suspicious fire there in the last month. Damage to the building made it unsafe for tenants, according to the inspector. So the city ordered the building closed. That order was temporarily blocked by owner Sidney Eisenberg. Before joining inspectors this morning, he told us the order to close the apartment was unfair.
Ordinarily, when there's a fire, you don't have a team come in jumped in here and start making orders before people have a chance to clean up the debris.
After today's reinspection, it was back to court. The city inspector told us some repairs had been made at the Swiss Arms, but not enough.
In our opinion, they should not be in the building because there are some very serious problems. The fire doors, which would protect the stairways, have either not been repaired or have been repaired by materials or construction methods which would not assure that smoke and heat would not get into those stairways.
The hearing on whether the Swiss Arms should remain open will reconvene tomorrow morning. Kathy Michaelby, Channel 12 Action News at the Milwaukee County Courthouse.
Well, if you already own your home and your car and your furniture, and if your kid's already out of college, then this probably won't have a lot of effect on you. Prime rate went up 21% today. Now, if you were hoping to buy a home or a car or some furniture or send your kid to school, the world hasn't come to an end, but boy, it sure may slow down. 21%, and that's if you know secrets about your banker's background or something. There may be a connection here, maybe not, but a Channel 12 unscientific survey of Christmas shoppers today shows a large percentage of them are using cash and are not getting involved with those interest-incurring credit cards this year.
Yes, Christmas, a seasonal time of merriment and good cheer, and crowds of shoppers counting the days seem to go by too quickly. But along with all of that hustle and bustle, there is another aspect which costs you and the store lots of money. More on that now from Cynthia Collier.
If your Christmas list is like mine, it seems to get longer and longer every year, and the prices certainly don't go down. Some of it we can write off to inflation, but it may surprise you to know that up to 7% of those price hikes is a direct result of one of the most expensive monetary crimes in the state of Wisconsin and the country, shoplifting. Last year, shoplifting cost the state $15 million in sales tax. For taxpayers and homeowners, the cost per average family was $400. A lot of money for someone else's crime. Christmas time is shoplifting time. Figures show that 45% of store theft happens during the holiday season.
It is a crime. It's not a lark. It's costing a lot of money, roughly $365 million last year, that we're paying for. We're either paying in higher prices, we're making it up in additional tax revenue that the state is not bringing in because of the sales tax. And it is affecting everyone, and it is not a lark. It's not a problem for kids only. It's a problem for everybody.
Most store managers agree only a small number of customers come into their stores to steal. 20% of shoplifting is done by professionals, people who make their living by stealing and reselling the loot. But incredibly, 80% of shoplifters are amateurs. And a recent survey showed that out of 25,000 high school students, 70% admitted to having done it. Most people feel what they take isn't significant.
Well, the average shoplifter that we bring into our office will give us normally one of two reasons. One is that it's a victimless crime, that they can't see anybody being hurt from that crime. However, the National Department of Commerce states that 34% of all business failures yearly is due to white-collar crime. And again, white-collar crime is a combination of employee dishonesty and shoplifting. The second reason that usually is given is that the company won't miss it.
Retailers spend millions of dollars on one-way mirrors, lookout towers, closed-circuit TV, sophisticated electronic gadgetry, better trained and better paid personnel. And that cost is passed right along to the consumer. The problem for the retailer is identifying the shoplifter. The next time you pay for that item, look around you. It could be anyone, the person right next to you, your best friend. Tomorrow we'll profile a shoplifter and why they steal. Cynthia Collier, Channel 12 Action News, Milwaukee.
Just for the record, let me point out that the shoplifting scenes which you saw in that report were part of a training film for store clerks to learn how to watch for shoplifters. That was not a crime in the process. Federal government has just concluded a 3-year study, and it says that just because a person is in prison is no reason to keep that person and his or her spouse separated for the entire term of the sentence. Or to say that another way, married prisoners have, they say, the federal right to conjugal visits with their spouses. Washington wants local and state jails and prisons to also provide facilities and opportunity for such visits. The requirement, at least in federal prisons, will go into effect in 1984. Local jails will not be forced to do anything, but they may, we are told, face federal lawsuits if they choose not to act on their own. Ron Swoboda is off tonight. Roger Sim has the sports right after we pause for this. We'll be right back. School kids in their basketball season getting serious about now.
Oh, yes, and we're reaching that point where we're starting to separate the wheat from the chaff. It was showdown time in the Parkland Conference tonight as Oak Creek hosted Racine Case. Oak Creek came into the game at 5-0, while Racine Case sported a 5-1 record. And this was a game of streaks. Case in the dark uniform scored the first 4 points, but then the Knights rattled off 10 in a row to take a 10-4 lead. But the Eagles came right back to tie it up. Oak Creek enjoyed the edge in the closing moments of the first half and emerged with a 13-10 lead. The Eagles, though, began pulling away in the second period, building up an 11-point lead before settling back to a 26-18 lead at halftime. The Eagles spent the second half trying to catch up, but Oak Creek was able to turn back every challenge, and at the final buzzer, it was Oak Creek 58, Racine Case 45. The Eagles thus upped their record to 6-0, and just as importantly, are now the only undefeated team in the Parkland Conference. Elsewhere tonight, Marquette, which may be the #1 team in the state, beat Milwaukee Lutheran 52-33. Marquette now 6-0. It was Whitnall over Pewaukee 78-63, the first win of the year for Whitnall. St. Francis down Franklin 77-45. Franklin now 0-4. And in the girls' suburban conference, Racine Horlick beat Riverside 54-35. Well, it was only 2 weeks ago that we were telling you how the Bucks had 3 players leading the way for...
Good evening, everyone, and welcome once again to Sports 36 2-Minute Drill. I'm John Bartell. Tonight on our program, we'll have highlights of several high school football games played around the Milwaukee area this weekend. One game we wanted to bring to you, but we are not able to because it was postponed until Sunday afternoon. A game in the Metro Conference between the Waukesha Memorial Crusaders and the Pius XI Popes. That game was rained out, a rare one on Saturday night. Too much rain, wind, and lightning. Pius needs a win, the game being played Sunday, so we'll have to find out what happened. Pius needs a win to get into the playoffs. Waukesha Memorial 3-2, an important game for both teams. Before we go any further, let's turn it to Adrian Sakowitz for a game played this weekend between McGuanago and Oak Creek.
Thank you, John. This Parkland Conference Showdown features the strong running games of Oak Creek and Mukwonago. Oak Creek is unbeaten in conference action, while Mukwonago has dropped only one. So we're looking forward to a wide-open battle here on homecoming night in Oak Creek. Now over to Tom Mashevsky in Shorewood.
Thank you, Adrian. I'm here at Shorewood High School for a suburban conference game between the Shorewood Greyhounds of the small school division and the West Dallas Hale Huskies of the large school division. Shorewood at this time is unbeaten in 4 small school division outings, while Hale is 3-2 in the large school division after being upset by Waukesha South last week. The Shorewood Greyhounds feature an outstanding runner in Dave Poulet, number 38, who has gained almost 700 yards rushing this year, while Hale quarterback Jim Floriance is the Huskies' igniter in the wishbone offense. John, this game is critical for Shorewood if they intend to reach the WIAA playoffs, so we should see some good hitting tonight. Back to you for the highlights of the Waukesha Memorial Pius 11 game.
Well, instead of doing the highlights of the Saturday night game between Waukesha Memorial and Pius 11, we are here in the beautiful, spacious garage here at Waukesha South High School where they would have played. Raining pretty hard outside right now, and Sunday afternoon they were playing their game. We weren't able to have the score in time for this game. And Bill, what was your game plan for tonight?
Well, we wanted it to rain, and it did. No,
it's pretty rare that a game gets rained out, isn't it?
Yeah, we know that Pius has got a super ball club. Ron has done a great job bringing Pius back, and we look for a great ball game against them.
Your team went to the state playoffs last year, and one of your first years at Waukesha Memorial. That had to be kind of a thrill for you.
Right. We've been very successful the last 3 years. We've won a state 2 years ago, and last year we were state runner-up. Our kids, we think our program's on the upswing. We were kind of low in our senior class this year, but our underclassmen are doing a very good job for us this year.
How's your team doing on the whole as far as what you've seen so far in your games this year?
Well, we feel we're steadily improving each week. We got blown out the first week by Thomas More, 30-8, but we're playing a lot of young kids. They're going to make mistakes, and we're seeing a progressively improved ball club each week.
What are you looking for the next couple of weeks after this game Sunday afternoon against Pius?
We expect to win our last 2 ball games. We've got Milwaukee Lutheran coming up and Racing St. Kate's, and our kids, we feel that we're playing more and more of the younger kids, and we're getting better and better each week. So we expect to finish out on a good note this year for next year.
Good. Let me move over here to Ron Weed, the head coach at Pius. And Ron, your team has had some very good success this year. Your one loss to Marquette in a game that was pretty close, wasn't it?
Yeah, we lost by a score of 7-0. And they scored late in the fourth quarter, and of course their only losses to Thomas More. They won this afternoon by a score of 7-0 against St. Joe's. So, there's 2-3 teams that could be picked for the state yet and have an outside shot of going to the state. And Billy here, who's done an excellent job at Memorial, they've got an outside shot. And, this is a big game for both of us. If we can win this one, we got a chance. If they win it, they've got a chance. So this is a crucial ball game for both of us.
Do you see the Metro Conference as being more even, or are there just your 4 teams, Marquette and Thomas More included, as probably the cream of the conference this year?
Oh, no, nothing could be farther from the truth. There are people that think maybe right now Memorial may have the best team in the conference. They started off slow. They played a lot of young kids, and boy, I tell you, they just hammered on St. Joe's, gave them their first loss last week. And St. Joe's is a good football team. So I think there's a lot of depth in the conference. We don't really have a weak sister. Messmer's been playing outstanding football, and so has Dominican, and they've got that great all-conference passer there, and if he puts it together, he can beat you on any given night.
What do you look for in the rest of the season? We heard from Bill. What are your hopes for the rest of the year?
Well, this is a big ball game tomorrow for us, and we've got to try to get the job done out here tomorrow. Everybody knows we've got some good running backs, and our line has been a little bit slow developing, and hopefully they can turn it around if they start getting after some people. We got a big game this week. We play Thomas More the following week, and we go and play St. Joe's in our homecoming. So it's Billy's over the hill after he gets by us. We've got an all-uphill battle in counting that game tomorrow.
We might be seeing one of your teams in the state playoffs, which are coming up in 2 weeks on Channel 36. So good luck to both of you guys, and let's take it back now to the rest of our program on Sports 36 2-Minute Drill.
and that was an important game for Pius 11. Let's take a look at the Metro Conference for this weekend and see what else happened. Marquette beating Kenosha St. Joseph's 7-0. Marquette getting back on its winning ways again. And Milwaukee Lutheran and Dominican played Saturday. We do not have the score of the game in time for the taping of this program, so check your Sunday paper for the score of that one. Here's the way the Metro Conference stands now, not including all of Saturday's games. Thomas More at 4-0. Kenosha St. Joe's will drop to 3-1. Marquette will move up to 4-1. Pius 11, Waukesha Memorial playing, of course, Saturday night. And the rest of the Metro Conference looks like this. Mesmer 2-3, Dominican and Racine St. Catherine's both at 1-4. Milwaukee Lutheran still looking for a win at 0-3. The WISA poll of the state independent high schools, not including this weekend's games. As we went into this weekend's games, you had Thomas More on top. They probably will stay right up there. Stevens Point, Pacelli, De Pere, Pennings, and Fond du Lac, St. Mary Springs, bringing up the rest of the top 5, including Milwaukee Marquette. And with their win, they should stay strong. Milwaukee Pius had votes coming into that one, so expect them to stay strong in the WISA state poll, Class A also. Let's move now to the Parkland Conference and a game played this weekend. And Adrian Sakowitz is going to be calling the shots in the game between McGuanago and Oak Creek.
Two teams with only one conference loss between them square off tonight here in Oak Creek. Good evening, everyone. The McGuanago Indians enter the game with a 3-1 mark in the Parkland Conference and stand 5-1 overall. Coach Keith Hensler depends heavily on his rushing game, which is anchored by Dan Benson. Oak Creek remains unbeaten in 4 Parkland Conference games and is also 5-1 overall. The Knights are coached by Tom Anderson and also field a strong rushing teams. If these high-powered offenses swing into gear, we could have quite an explosive ball game here tonight. Coupled with Greendale's win today, there's still one unbeaten team, and with Oak Creek 2 unbeaten teams in the conference. Oak Creek took the opening kickoff and, as expected, went immediately to their rushing game. On the second play from scrimmage, Brian Osgood broke free and raced 45 yards down to McGuanago's 20-yard line. Five plays later, Troy Odeja crashed over from 5 yards out for the game's first score. With the conversion, Oak Creek led 7-0. But the McGuanago Indians had some offense of their own in mind. On the ensuing kickoff, return man Dan Benson found the seam and galloped 95 yards for the score. And barely 3 minutes into the game, the score was tied at 7. The game did have some defensive highlights, too, such as this stop by Craig Fleischman of the Indians. On McGuanago's next possession, Dan Benson coughed up the ball, and Oak Creek's Jeff Seaman recovered. The Knights' offensive machine went to work again, crashing out hunks of real estate at a time. Here, Brian Osgood picks up 10. Tony Jages gets the call this time and rambles for 22 more. On the 8th play of the drive, Brian Osgood bangs it over from 2 yards out. The conversion failed, but Oak Creek now led 13-7. McGuanago came right back. Quarterback Terry Levinsky began the drive by chalking up 9 yards. Benson picks up 7 on this play as the first quarter expires. 2 plays later, Pat McFetridge took it over for the score, and with the conversion, McGuanago went out in front, 14-13. Oak Creek knew that unbeaten Greendale had already won their ball game, so they must win in order to keep pace in the division. On their next possession, they began to move the ball again. Osgood continued his superb running by picking up 19 yards on this play. On the next play, Osgood scampers for 9 more. Here, Greg Dadka gets the call and knocks out 12 yards. 2 plays later, quarterback Tom Hintz unexpectedly goes to the air and hooks up with Bill Robish on a 21-yard touchdown strike. With the conversion, Oak Creek jumped back in front, 20-14. Oak Creek had come into the game averaging 17 points on offense, while McGuanago averaged 27 on offense. On their first play after the kickoff, Levinsky hooked up with Dan Nagel, and if not for this touchdown-saving tackle by Jeff Seaman, the Indians would have been on the board again. Now McGuanago had to work for their yardage. Levinsky goes for 20 on this play. McFetridge runs for 8 more. But on this 4th down play, Nagel mishandles a Levinsky pass and the drive stalls at the Oak Creek 11. Oak Creek commits a costly turnover at their own 17 with this fumble that is recovered by Kurt Goetsch of the Indians. As the first half is winding down, the Indians desperately want to get on the board again. Nagel picks up 8 on this reception. But as the clock is running down, McWanago fails on 2 plays to push the ball over from the 3, and as the half ends, McWanago's a yard short of the goal line. At half, the score is Oak Creek 20, McWanago 14.
They get right down to the, it must have been, 3-yard line with 2 cracks and didn't take it in. That had to make a big difference, I'm sure, in the ball game. And I don't know, they stopped them and they made a big swing for us again.
McWanago has the first possession of the second half, but on the second play from scrimmage, Jeff Seaman strips the ball from the receiver and gives the Knights great field position. Oak Creek tries to build up a lead, starting with his 18-yard pass to Tony Jajits, but 3 costly penalties stall their drive and force a punt. But McWanago can't put anything together now as Joe Betancourt hammers quarterback Terry Lubinsky on this 3rd down play. Oak Creek gets the ball back on a punt and begins putting things together again. Greg Dadka carries for 22 on this play. Troy Odeja is the recipient of this beautiful 25-yard pass from Tom Hintz that carries down to the 5. 3 plays later, Steve Rott bangs it over from the 1 to give Oak Creek a 26-14 lead. After an unintentional onside kick gave the ball back to Oak Creek, the Knights tried to put together another scoring drive, but this Tom Hintz fumble is recovered by Kurt Goetsch, and the Indians now have the ball again. But McWanago couldn't take advantage of the fumble and promptly turned the ball back over to Oak Creek. 8 plays later, quarterback Tom Hintz darted virtually untouched up the middle for another 6 points. The conversion failed again, but the score was now Oak Creek 32, McWanago 14. As the game clock ran down, Oak Creek tacked on still another touchdown on this 10-yard run by Brian Osgood. That made the final score Oak Creek 39, McWanago 14. Brian Osgood had an outstanding game, rushing for 148 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Oh, I really got to hand it to the line. Lance Branham and Paul Mason on the left side, they do an unbelievable job. Every time it was wide open for me, and that's why it happened.
Our defense just got up the way we've been getting up all year. We got a strong defense, #1 in the conference, and we just got it together at the end.
The win by Oak Creek sets up a showdown next week between 2 powerful Parkland Conference unbeatens, Greendale and Oak Creek, with a state playoff berth on the line.
Oh, Greendale's tough. I went and I saw them play today. Greendale's beat us badly the last 3 years. I mean, 30-something to nothing, 30-7. They got the jinx on us, so we're going to have to talk to the kids, and we're going out to their place, be under their lights. We never played them at their place under the lights. And I got to put it all together. I got to play as good or better than we played this week if we can again, because Greendale they're super too.
For Sports 36.
Channel 12 Sports Department takes great pride in being able to introduce to you this year's Channel 12 High School All-Star Team. Now, on this broadcast, I'd like you to meet this season's defensive squad. Let's meet them. Presenting the 1981 Channel 12 High School All-Star Defensive Team, selected by a panel of coaches from the Channel 12 viewing area. At the 1-end position, Robert Tomlinson, a 6-foot, 225-pound senior captain from Marquette High School. Bob was also all-conference this season. At the other end spot, Brant Olson, a 6'2", 211-pound senior from Brookfield East, also all-conference performer. In the interior line, Greg Ochalik, a 6-foot, 190-pounder from Thomas Moore, a 3-year starter for Coach Jim Haluska. Terry Layden from Menominee Falls North, a 6-foot, 200-pounder who was also named Player of the Year and was also all-conference, both offense and defense. Also on the inside, Marquette's Dave Wanta, a 6'3", 225-pound senior who's registered 18 quarterback sacks in the past 2 seasons. At the linebacker spots, Ed Garrett, a 6', 220-pound senior from Milwaukee Pius. He was the leading tackler on his team this season, averaging 10 solo hits a game. And Ray Gilliland, Milwaukee Tech's 5'9", 190-pound senior defensive standout. Ray had 110 tackles this season, all conference out of the Milwaukee Area South Conference. In the defensive secondary, John McHugh, 6'4", 190-pound senior from Milwaukee-Madison, who had 4 interceptions this past year and one of their top defensive players. Racine Horlick, Scott Mobeck, a 6-foot, 180-pounder who led his club's defense, and he was another all-conference performer out of the Milwaukee suburban area. Pat Kuchevar from South Milwaukee stands 5'10" and 165 pounds, returned 15 punts for an average of 19 yards per return. And Greg Baker from Thomas More, only 5'5" and 150 pounds, but came up with the big plays during the season for his state champion Thomas More team. And rounding out the 1981 team is Rich Reith, the outstanding punter from Milwaukee Lutheran. Rich averaged well above the 40-yard mark during the entire fall campaign. And that's this year's Channel 12 High School All-Star Defense.
High school basketball is back on Sports 36. And tonight, as we did all of last year, we've got an outstanding game coming your way. Hello again, everyone. I'm John Bartell along with Jerry Sullivan. And we're at Oak Creek tonight for a Parkland Conference matchup between Eastern Division leader Kettle Moraine and Western Division leader Oak Creek. And Jerry, some great talent out here. Both teams have yet to taste defeat after 4 outings so far. You look at this Kettle Moraine team, they got an outstanding player in 6'6" junior J.J. Weber.
You're certainly correct there, John. I think J.J. Weber will be one of the premier players in the entire state. Last year as a sophomore, he averaged 15 points and 15 rebounds. This year, he's off to a great start. He's averaging 20.3, shooting 61% from the field, and he's averaging 19.5 rebounds per game. And, of course, Joel Giese, the senior captain and leader, he's right up there with them in rebounding and scoring.
You look at this Oak Creek team that they're matched up against. They don't have great individual talent as such, but team-wise, they are very tough.
They believe in the team concept, but they have 2 big, hefty boys underneath. Rob Hoffman is 6'5", 210 pounds. He played on that state tournament team 2 years ago. And Lance Brenneman, he's 6'3", 235 pounds, and he's quite a rebounder. As a matter of fact, just this past Wednesday, Dave McLean from the University of Wisconsin football team was down here and offered him a full scholarship next year if he so wishes. He's an outstanding football player.
Sounds like we got some great matchups on the floor tonight between the players and between the teams. You stay with us for this Parkland Conference game between Kettle Moraine and Oak Creek. We'll be back with the starting lineups in just a moment. From Oak Creek High School in Oak Creek, Wisconsin, Sports 36 brings you prep basketball. Tonight, it's the Lasers of Kettle Moraine against the Oak Creek Knights. How you doing, everyone? Our 6th season of high school basketball on Sports 36, and we're all set to get going here. And ready to give us the starting lineups of tonight's game is our public address announcer, Warren Schreika.
May we have your attention, please, for the starting lineups for tonight's ball game. From Kettle Moraine High School, at 1 guard, number 11, Scott Owen. At another guard, number 15, Eric Minch. At a forward, number 23, Joel Gizik. At center, number 43, Kevin Stussy. And at a forward, number 45, J.J. Weber. Starting for Oak Creek, at a guard, number 10, Tom Hintz. At another guard, number 20, Jeff Seaman. At a forward, number 40, John Lazarzik. At center, number 52, Rob Huffman. And at another forward, number 54, Lance Branneman.
Head coaches at Kettle Moraine, Dave Rupp now, head coach at Oak Creek, is Sherm Snamiska.
These are relatively young coaches. They've only been coaching now, I think, 3 years at the most.
Both teams undefeated in the season, both in non-conference play and in the Parkland Conference so far this year. For Kettle Moraine last year, 13-7 overall, 11-5 in the Parkland Conference, finishing second in the Berlin Eisenhower. And last year was 9-7 in the Parkland Conference for Oak Creek, 10-9 overall.
I don't think you could find a better matchup for the first game, John. There's some extremely tall youngsters out here, and there's going to be a great matchup at the guards also.
Oh, we got some good matchup right here. This is Lazarchuk. His brother, Tim, had played